As people have been watching my process videos, they've been asking me one question over and over again. Are you working on one layer? Like, what's going on there? So I'm going to break it down for you. I don't work on one layer. I actually work on a lot of layers. But I have this philosophy that I call top layer, best layer. I'm going to share it with you right now. So first things first, I'm going to click and hold and peel back all of these layers here. Let's scroll all the way down to the bottom and then bring back our sketch. First things first, I usually paint a little bit underneath the sketch. There's been some lassoing around, but I lay in the silhouette of the figure and then maybe some loose like environmental stuff, just trying to lay out where the composition is. You can see I've got some ideas and where this is heading. It's all very loose, very scribbly. And I'm building it up. Every time I change ideas and I want to try out something new, but I don't want to destroy what I just worked on, I make a new layer. That's the philosophy. Whenever I feel that little twinge of like, I don't want to this up, I just make a new layer. And here at the beginning, I've done a bunch of layers just trying to figure out what the values of this piece are, what the composition is, and now we've got what is ultimately going to be more or less the final composition. Everything is super scribbly and loose. From there, we're starting to paint on top of it, figuring out like where's the values going to be. It starts to get a little bit more refined, but before it gets too refined, I usually like to add a splash of color. Here's a couple of gradient maps, done some gradient map magic. This layer is hard light. This is me glazing in some local colors here. The color palette is something that I'm just trying to intuit. I'm laying in another round of it. I wanted the background to be a little bit darker, a little bit deeper blue. And then again, even more gradient maps, playing around with some effects to make the gold areas look a little less washed out. And then adding this in was bringing in some of that gold into the clouds while keeping the background kind of bluish. This coloring process is just a lot of experimentation, trying out a ton of different gradients, trying to mask them out in different ways. Eventually, I end up with something that it feels right, but it's just messy. And from there, I'm just making a new layer. Top layer, best layer. After I'm done with like all of the weird gradient maps and blending modes and stuff, I'm just making a new layer and I'm just painting opaque paint up on top of it. By using like the eyedropper tool, by holding the Alt key, I can just grab whatever color I want and start painting over it. And then I go, you know what, actually, I want to hit it with another gradient map. And so there's more gradient maps, twisting the whole thing around. That's the point where things just started to go full on normal brush mode. You can see it's just a million little brush strokes. I do this in my process videos. It clips from like the first two brush strokes to the last two. When you isolate it, you can really see how many there are. In some cases, it gets very opaque. I'm painting over it a lot, but I'm just getting all these colors by color picking straight off the canvas. And then I end up with these polished layers that when I have everything where I want it, all it is pushing the edges and surface details around. And then at some point, I get that feeling again where I'm like, I have an idea. I don't want to screw up all the work that I've done. And I make a new layer again. And this is just another one of those painting layers. I have ideas about the surface texture and the final details in the figure, but I've come so far. Maybe it doesn't even matter, but I want to like do some final polish on this without screwing anything up. And so new layer on the top layer, best layer. Same thing with the hand. I want to reposition the hand. I'm just going to do it over the top layer, best layer. I wanted to bring in some more glowing gold into this. It's a hard light layer, but I'm going to want to blend it in. So another normal layer goes on top layer, best layer, and I'm off to finish the final details. And then the very final adjustment, I've got a levels adjustment with a gradient on it to focus it in on the focal point of the composition. It's a final adjustment, and that's it. That's top layer, best layer. It's kind of like working on one layer in the sense that I'm always painting over the previous work, but because it's non-destructive, if I ever had a moment where I did something really dumb, and it's easy for me to peel it back without having to constantly paint over my work. Being able to like easily scrape away layers or go and reconfigure gradient maps. You know, this is one of the joys of gradient maps is you can go in here and go and play around and change the parameters after the fact. When you work top layer, best layer, you're always able to second guess prior choices without having to make a commitment to anything. It's really nice. You can stay intuitive about the whole process without having to like worry about what layer you're on or keeping elements separate from each other. And you don't have to worry about painting in the wrong spot on the PSD. It's a lot more like traditional painting, but it has these extra advantages to it that are only possible in digital paint. And that's why I love this workflow so much. I hope this helped you out. I hope that this was informative for giving you a little bit more insight into what's happening in my painting process videos. And if you love what you see, I keep forgetting to mention this, go support my Patreon, please. It's patreon.com/angelarium. Thank you so much. I'll see you around. Goodbye.